lifting heavy and just like being able to lift heavy things and get strong just really changed my mindset to, I can do this. Like this, I'm not going to limit myself anymore. I think as women, a lot of times we like put self limitations on ourselves. Like, and it's mind blowing because if you'd have told me like that I would be eating this many calories a day and not
Mhm.
gaining weight, I'd be like, you're kidding. Like, significant weight.
Mhm.
You're joking. That's not possible. And it's just
Yep.
crazy to actually be living it out like daily.
Wits and Weights community, welcome to another episode of the Wits and Weights podcast. In today's episode, I am thrilled to bring you an inspirational conversation with my client, Carol. Carol recently celebrated her 26th wedding anniversary. She's a proud mother of two amazing children and a passionate teacher. When she's not shaping minds in the classroom, Carol might be walking on the local greenway, hiking, reading, cooking, baking, or practicing yoga. But the true testament of her dedication and discipline is her newfound love for strength training. In just 4 months, Carol transformed her body composition, going from 30% body fat to an impressive 16%, losing 23 pounds of fat while gaining 3 pounds of muscle during a fat loss phase. She's mastered the art of nutrition, balancing her macros, overcoming disordered eating habits, and enjoying full and satisfying meals without feeling restricted. More importantly, she's hit significant strength milestones, bench pressing a personal max, going from 1 to 10 consecutive pull ups, and discovering a deep seated confidence in herself and her abilities. Her journey isn't just about personal wins, though. It's also the positive influence she's become for her children, the mental resilience she's developed, and her relentless pursuit of goals she once thought were unattainable. Carol's story is a beautiful example of the physically and mentally transformative power of strength training and fueling your performance. So, Carol, it is a pleasure to have you on the show.
Wow, thank you so much. I'm really thrilled to be here. That was like the most glowing introduction ever. Thank you.
Absolutely. I mean, it is just the truth. And I know sometimes it's hard to hear our own like story told back to us and or hard or helpful or whatever. But it's really nice to talk to you in this context because we're usually on a coaching call, right?
Right.
And now we get to really explore all the wonderful things that we've been through together in your journey. So let's talk about how you got to this moment. Tell us what your health and fitness journey looked like before the recent transformation, and then leading to the moment that you realized that you wanted to step it up and do something different.
Sure, absolutely. So I guess I've been on this whole health and fitness journey for about 10 years, maybe. It really first started after my husband and I moved with our two children to a new city. And at that time, my son was in school and my daughter started preschool. And I knew that I wanted to do something more active than what I'd been doing. And I had a little bit more free time on my hands. I was a stay home mom. So I started running. I just started running and I loved it. I really enjoyed it. It was a great outlet. And I'd never done that before. And so I made some pretty, fast gains and just really loved it. I started doing 5Ks and that sort of thing and really got into it. My husband likes to run too, so it'd be fun to run with him. And then eventually I just started doing some strength training at home on my own with dumbbells. I don't know if you've heard of Kathy Smith. I'm gonna date
Mhm.
myself here, but I had a couple of Kathy Smith videos, and I would do those, like, I'd alternate upper body, lower body. I just do them at home after I'd go for my jog.
Sure.
And, then eventually, there was a CrossFit box that opened up, about 15 minutes from our house, and I was like, I'm gonna do that. So I got into CrossFit. It was really fun. I loved it. It was, I think what I loved most about it was the community aspect because I was really seeking that. And it was just so fun. It was great. And you have accountability and you have support. And you can like compete with each other, but it's all in good fun. So
Mhm.
that was great. I loved it. However, I guess after about 3 months or so, I injured one of my legs, my right
Yeah.
leg, and I think it was because of deadlifts. I'm not certain, but I was essentially sent for an MRI. Nothing major was found. It was just, I was diagnosed with like anterior tibial tendonitis, or, it
Mhm.
was kind of like
Mhm.
this weird, vague diagnosis. However,
Sure.
I did have to wear a boot for like I don't know, maybe a month. I don't really remember. And that was during the summer. So that was pretty not fun. My
Yeah.
kids were out of school and I'm stuck in this boot. And after that, I just kind of thought, maybe CrossFit isn't really for me. And so then, like, I shifted more towards running again once my leg healed. And oh, fast forward a few
So
years.
just to stop you there, right? So because this is a very relatable to I'm sure a lot of people get into these
Yes.
various things, and myself too. CrossFit, you injured the leg, maybe from something you did in CrossFit, and that was the sole reason you stopped doing it. It wasn't anything else, right? You like the
Yeah.
community and all that, but thought this is maybe too dangerous or maybe not the mode of exercise I want to attempt.
Absolutely, that's
Okay,
so true, like, I
okay,
loved everything else about it, but then I was like, "Oh gosh, I got injured and I was, like, out of commission for a long time," and
okay,
that was awful. Yeah.
okay.
Yeah, so, I like I said, I kept on running a lot, and then, eventually, I just sort of did all running altogether. I was still doing some dumbbells at home, but then eventually I just kind of stopped doing that. I returned to a full-time job teaching and I just didn't really have a lot of time. So like all I could do was go for my run in the morning and that was really all the time I had. And so finally I guess this was maybe like a couple of years ago. I was seeing a doctor at the time for just some health problems and he was like, "I really think you're taxing your adrenals too much. You need to give the running a break." And I'm like,
Hmm.
"What? I don't want to do that." But I did. And so it was at that time that I really started doing the weights and I stopped running. I decided I would just walk instead of run. And then I started doing a lot more weight training on my own in the time that I would have spent running.
Hmm.
So I did it on my own for about a year and a half, maybe ish. Just doing the YouTube videos. I had a couple of
Hmm.
channels I loved. Carolyn Gervin was one, and I would just use the dumbbells, and that was pretty much it. I do like maybe 30, 45 minutes a day. Um, and so then I guess more recently was when we about a year, maybe last fall, I should say last fall. Um, I was when I really got interested in doing it more, like
Hmm.
just with dumbbells. And it was probably really in December that I decided I was just going to go for it because we have all the equipment at our house. My husband uh, like totally decked out our garage and it's a home gym basically.
Cool.
So
Yeah.
fabulous. It's so great, and I feel so lucky to have that. Don't have to go anywhere. It's just, right there. So, I feel like it was maybe in December or January that I heard you on a podcast interview with Karen Martell.
Hmm.
I had started working with Karen to address some health problems I was having, and she interviewed you, and it was like the best interview. And I knew I was like, I've got to start lifting heavy and you knew everything, you had all the right answers, and I was like, I've got to start doing this. And so I basically just kind of started out there with the barbell training, going up from the dumbbells, and I've been just doing that ever since.
Love it, love it. So that whole story is not so uncommon. I mean, except the part about, finding me and saying it was the perfect interview. So I appreciate that because I'll just let that image sit there. But you mentioned the hormones, right? You mentioned the adrenals, for example, and
Right.
I think a lot of people do find it surprising when, like, if somebody asks me, "What do I do? I've got all this stress." I'm like, "You're doing too much, and maybe you should lift heavy." No, and the confusion's often there. How does lifting heavy weights, help with your stress and adrenals? And we find that the recovery, right, the recovery versus the stress that you're placing on your body, it just shifts in a completely different direction. And it sounds like you started to discover that and then you did the dumbbells, and then you started to get into barbells. Now, what was it? And I'm not stroking my ego here, but what was it that you heard on that interview that you're like, I have to do this?
Um, well, so I've been doing the dumbbells on my own for so long, and I just felt like I wasn't progressing. And I mean, there's only so much you can do with
Okay.
dumbbells. And so
Okay.
I think it was really that. And I felt like I had maxed out on that. And also, I was getting a little burnout on it. I was like, it's getting kind of boring. I'd like to try something new. And back in the day when I did CrossFit, I loved it, and I
Okay.
had just, yeah. So it just sort of reignited the fire in me to get back into it.
Yeah, so that's great. So it's a plateau, which I think is important for listeners because it's one of the biggest problems people have is plateaus in their training, their nutrition, their physique, and like you said, it could come from doing the same thing over and over again and something not changing enough to change you, and there's something has to give, right? And you recognize that it was the load on the bar, and some people tiptoe around this, but like if you ask me what is the quote unquote best way to lift, I'm probably going to say barbell training, and then you can say, well, what about dumbbells? What about bands? What about body weight? I'm gonna say yes, yes, yes. Those are all effective for a while, because as you get strong, it's just a function of going against gravity. And like you said, the dumbbells get kind of burned out because you have the same movements over and over again, and you're not going to be lifting 150-pound dumbbells probably
Right.
before you probably instead switch to barbell. So, one of the things you did is you hit a PR on your bench, right?
Yeah.
While we worked together, you were really excited about that, and
Yeah.
I just want you to talk about that excitement as in the context of this, so that people understand how fun barbell training can actually be.
Sure, sure, absolutely. Well, usually when I'm doing my strength training, it's in the morning by myself in our gym, our home gym. Um, and I don't ever have anyone spotting me. I get up really early because I have to leave the house really early to get to work. And so we were on vacation and there was a local gym that I'd looked into. And so we decided to just pay the 1 week fee and join it. And my husband and I, and then sometimes my son, we would all go together. And so since he was there to spot me, technically it was supposed to be a deload week. Like I told
Mhm.
myself I was going to do a deload, but I was like, gosh, he's here to spot me. So I'm just going to go for it. So, yeah, no, it was really, really fun. It was just great. Not only that I got a PR, but also just having the encouragement of him and then some other folks around there, that were watching and stuff. um, and so, yeah, it's just nice to achieve a goal that you have in your head and be like, wow, I really can do that,
Mhm.
and yeah, so that's been really fun. Since then I did a 1 rep max on my body weight for the bench press, which was pretty cool. So
That
I,
is amazing. That's a big
yeah,
milestone. Yeah.
pretty fun. It's just so fun.
Yeah. So you got into strength training. This was late last year, correct? Leading into the beginning of the year, or not
Yeah,
got into strength training, but barbell training.
barbell training was really probably more like January,
Okay.
because in the fall, I was still doing the dumbbells, and
Sure.
I was having all these health problems, and I'd gained some weight, and so then in January, I was like, I'm gonna do this barbell thing. So yeah.
Yeah. So then you got into that, and let's also turn into the nutrition side because that's a lot of where we worked
Right.
on together. How did you? I know you found out about me through the podcast, but the coaching practice and Wits and Weights and the community. How did you find out about all that, and what resonated with you and your goals?
Yeah, sure. Well, after I heard your interview with Karen, I of course subscribed to your podcast immediately, and I started like listening to every every
Mhm.
single one I could. And
You didn't
so
start from episode 1, did you? I always tell people don't do that.
no, I don't think I listened to episode
Yeah.
1, but I mean, they're so educational and so informative, and you cover all the basics, and it makes it very like just anyone can do this, like
Mhm.
anyone can do this. And so that was really, I guess, where I got started, just listening to your podcast. And then I guess I reached out to you because, like, I mean, one thing that really impressed me about you was just your genuine desire to help other people. I mean,
Mhm.
like, you're the real deal, like, there's no gimmicks, none of that. And I knew that I could do like a one on one call with you just as like a basic introduction kind of thing and not have to pay for it. And I thought,
Mhm.
this is amazing. So that was when I reached out to you and we did the one on one. And then I feel like you really gave me some great guidance, like first steps, things to do to get me on the path to where I needed to be.
And what were those things? So what were, if you remember, what were the things that you really wanted when I'll say when we started working together, because eventually you became a client, but even in that initial call, which, as you said, it's not the way I do them. It's not like discovery calls, sales calls, because I can't stand those tactics. And I don't like
Right.
like, let me get you in a call and then I'm going to sell you. I don't even mention that in my coaching unless you ask, but it's really like, how do we get you from A to B? Because for me, that's what frustrated me for years and years and years, is just knowing exactly how to do it. And that how to do it is often not what we think. There's so many beliefs that we have to to shift from what we thought to what they really are. What were the things you really wanted and your big goals at the time?
Yeah, so, just real quick to say something you helped
Sure.
me learn to shift was my attitude towards training. Like, I was, like, all in, but, like, too much all in. Like, I was
Mm.
way overtraining. Like, I was hardcore 5 days a week, like, and sometimes Saturday and Sunday, just never allowed my body a chance to rest and recover. So, like, you really helped me make that change for sure, that it's okay to take a rest day and to recover, and that's part of the
Yes.
process. So that was awesome. And then the other shift was with nutrition because, like any other time that I had like tried to lose weight, I would just restrict, restrict, restrict. And I like restrict, every day, like Monday through Friday, and not eat enough. And then on the weekend, I'd be starving.
Mm.
And so then I just like eat all the things, which just, I was just like totally backpedaling any progress that I've made. And it was totally not sustainable, not sustainable at all. So you helped me really see a sustainable way to pursue nutrition in a way that allowed me to reach my goals. And so like my primary goal was really just to lose weight, because I just wasn't comfortable at my body weight. I didn't feel good and healthy. During the fall, I'd had some health problems and I hadn't been able to work out at all for like maybe a couple months. I don't know. So
Mhm.
that was my biggest goal. But also, I just wanted to get back to where I felt strong and fit and healthy. So
Yeah, so much there. So the first thing you mentioned was that less is more, and I can't tell you how many. I would say the vast majority of the conversations I have with people is do less, just do less, and you get the kind of the look, really, right, or the concern that isn't my metabolism going to go down if I do less, right? And I think I
right.
even did a recent episode because I get that question so often, and it was about how working out less can increase your metabolism. So I'm glad you took that message and found that, hey, I could have more time in my life, more time to myself, and still make progress.
Right, right. When
Yeah,
you told
yeah,
me
yeah.
when you first told me to do just like Monday, Wednesday, Friday, like the compound movements, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, I was like, that's just 3 days a week. That's insane.
Yep.
Like, and I couldn't, like, it was so hard to make myself do that, to only do 3 days a week, but it definitely was what I needed.
It is, and it's counterintuitive to me to this day too, Carol. It really is, and there are some strength training programs that are like just do, heavy singles or triples twice a week, and do one movement, and you still make progress. And it's crazy to think that some of these things work, but your your growth in your strength and your muscle is really an adaptation, right? It happens as you sleep. It happens as you recover. So if you reframe and say what my lifting session is giving me the most maximum stimulus possible as short time as possible so that I can let that recovery process work. If I'm working out 7 days a week and if I'm running every day, I'm just constantly interrupting that process and never letting myself grow.
Absolutely, and that's
Right.
what I've been doing, which was just ridiculous. So, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and then the nutrition, the weekend binges, also very common, and I say common, Carol, right? Because I want you've got a lot of listeners who I know are going to learn from this conversation. Just like you said, the podcast likes to cover the basics and teach you things that anybody can do. Carol did this. Anybody listening can do this, and the things she's going through are the things that a lot of people go through. The weekend binges, where I people say I don't understand why I'm gaining weight or not losing weight. I'm really good Monday through Friday, and you don't realize how much you deviate on the weekends.
Right.
Right, whether it I don't know if it was alcohol or just mindless snacking or just going out, like what was it for you?
It was pretty much there was some mindless snacking for sure, but
Yeah.
also, like, just some emotional eating tied to, like,
Yes.
just daily stressors, like, just the buildup of stress and things like that. It's just like self-sabotage, So,
Yes.
yeah.
Yes, but somebody said recently on a show on another podcast I was listening to that, emotional eating is a learned behavior. It's a
Yeah.
learned behavior. And it sounds like you were able to either unlearn it or learn something to replace it. So I don't know if that's a simple thing that occurred for you or if it happened over time, but what do you think was the catalyst for that?
Well, I think just the process of, really dialing into my nutrition with you, and especially once I started using Macro Factor,
Mhm.
and eating enough calories on a daily basis and, like, not feeling restricted and, not feeling the need or, like, the want to overeat on the weekends because it was all good, you know? So that really just that process really taught me a lot about emotional eating and the triggers for it and what's the cause of it, and this is why it's because you're over restricting. So yeah.
Perfect. Yeah, so you became aware of what you were doing, and that awareness itself sounded like it already unlocked the vast majority of that journey, right? Because so many people just don't know what's happening. And now that you know, and now that you're tracking, and this is important because people think tracking is obsessive or causes disorders. What all that is bunk, right? We know from the evidence and from experience that unless you have a prior disorder, tracking only helps, like tracking your budget, right? Like tracking your schedule for your meetings and tracking everything else. It makes you aware and gives you control. And then the other thing you mentioned was eating more. And that's the other thing that's counterintuitive for people is so many people are not eating enough. And if you eat enough and let your body, relax and de-stress and not restrict, now all of these other issues go away.
Right,
Yeah.
absolutely, yeah.
Yeah. And I'm just paraphrasing everything you just said. It wasn't a question, but it's good to reemphasize how important all of these are. Okay. So I think about a 4-month period, you've gone through mostly a fat loss phase during that time. And just so the listener understands, like Carol is lifting, she's lifting properly with progressive overload. She's, pretty self-disciplined that in my opinion, like there's different levels of discipline people have just naturally. And not that discipline and willpower necessarily have to be high for this to work. That's where accountability comes in. But she's been able to take the things we talk about, like the sleep and the stress and all that, and go and execute to that. Um, and that allowed her to start a fat loss phase fairly quickly. It wasn't so, and I say that because not everybody's ready. Not everybody's ready for fat loss on day one.
Right.
And some people call it a cut, whatever you want to call it. So share the experience of navigating fat loss, right? The challenges and roadblocks, because it's not easy. Let's be honest. It's not
Right.
even fun always. Let's just be
Right.
honest. It's an extreme in a way. It's a deviation from the norm that we want to live every day, but you have to go through that process occasionally. So how was that for you?
Well, I mean, you are right. It's not easy, but also it wasn't nearly as hard as I thought it was going to be. I have
Right.
to say, like, Macro Factor was the best because it just does everything for you. You just punch in the numbers and it tells you what to do, and it's fabulous. So I just like, I followed that to a T. I'm really detail oriented, so I love tracking and like keeping up with everything. I love that. So I just did what Macro Factor told me to. And every week it would cut my calories by a little bit more, but it wasn't by these huge amounts every week. It was just like maybe 100 calories. Some weeks it was only 50 calories. And so gradually I would make the changes. I would sub in something for something else that, had less calories. And as I went along, and I learned a lot about which foods make me feel the best. With the least amount of calories. So that was
Hmm.
pretty cool. Um, and I was like, I guess maybe I think it was week 14 of the fat loss phase. I think I was down to 1,400 calories, and I never even had to go below that. Like, I didn't have to, I thought I was gonna have to go down to 1,200 or something.
Hmm.
That's a number to me that sounded really unmanageable, but it was great. And
And you're fairly petite, let's just say. I mean, we don't have to necessarily share all the details unless you want, but I would just want people to understand you're fairly petite. So
yeah.
1,400 calories is not bad, really, in a deep into a fat loss phase.
Right,
Yeah,
right. Yeah, I'm like 5'3", so
yeah, yeah,
um
exactly. It's important to know
yeah.
that, right? Yeah.
Yeah, so, like, that was not bad at all, and the other thing that I really, so I've always been someone who likes to eat mindfully because I have a history of some digestive illness,
Mhm.
and so I really usually always try to eat mindfully when I eat for that reason, but this really, like, dialed that in big time because, like, if you eat slower, then you're gonna get fuller, and, like, it really taught me the importance of just, like, eating slowly, and it really helps you, like, savor every bite and really appreciate what you're eating because you know
Mhm.
that that's all you're getting.
Fair
So
point.
yeah, honestly, I was really surprised at how, once all the pieces came together, like working with you and using macro factor, and of course the barbell training, once all the pieces came together, I was really surprised at like how effortless it seemed. I mean, I really did not anticipate losing the weight that quickly, and that was pretty cool.
Love it. Yeah, and I saw that progress. We can put it into numbers in a second, but you were surprised at how effortless it seemed. And just is there one thing that sticks out of all of that that was the most important? So I know it's a lot of things, and sometimes people feel overwhelmed, like, oh, I have to track and I have to train, I have to this and this and that, and ultimately you want to incorporate all those practices. But is there one or two things that were the most important out of those?
So yeah, like for sure tracking, but also just having the mindset that I was in this to be successful. Like in the past, anytime I'd ever tried like to lose weight on my own, I would always just I never would succeed. Like after a little while, I would never have any success and I'd give up. I just give up. And so this time there was just this mindset change that was like, I am going to do this. I can do this and I will do it. So I think that was really important to just keep in my head. And also, I mean, it's when you can see the progress, like since I was lifting heavy and you can see the progress from week to week, it's motivation to keep going.
So many good things here, Carol, right? So the first thing is the mindset to be successful, but not doing it on your own. I think that's important because I don't know about you. I have all sorts of coaches, mentors, teachers in my life, whether I pay them or not, they're all over and I seek them out because the fastest way that humans usually grow is getting feedback as you go through a
Mhm.
process to see what your mistakes are and how you can improve. And so you knew that if we got on a call and like things were just all out of whack, I'd let you know and we would dial them
Right.
in. Right.
Yeah.
And oftentimes what that happens, especially for a client like you again, who has that natural self-discipline, is you'll just then go ahead and make it happen so that you don't get called out in front of your
Right.
coach. So there's all different styles. Some people it's more reactionary, right? They kind of, make certain choices and then have to get schooled a little bit, in the coaching call, which is all good. Or you tend to have that in your brain, like, okay, now I'm going to be talking to my coach, so I better get it all in gear. But then by doing that, you got results, and those results motivated you. Now
Yes.
that's the awesome part of this because that means we don't have to be working together for 10 years. You're going to be able to go on your own and do it because you know that the results are going to happen. Like you have certainty that a lot of people lack. So awesome. Yeah,
Yeah,
good stuff.
right, absolutely, and, like, any doubts that I ever had about that, like, I would just reach out to you, and you just reassure me, and you tell me what to do, and I would do it, and it just worked like magic.
Yeah, like magic. Love it.
Yeah,
Yeah, no, it is like magic. I feel the same. Even when I go through the process myself and make choices, I'm like, wow, that actually works. It's biology. Um, so to put it in numbers for folks, I alluded to this in the intro. You lost 20 pounds from 140 to
mhm,
120. Okay, so there's your weight. We're gonna
yeah,
just put it out there,
right,
including a massive 14% loss in body fat. And so I want the listener to understand the incredible numbers here because when we talk about gaining, maintaining, and losing, generally people who have some training under their belt, they might be able to do some recomposition at maintenance. Generally, it's very hard to gain extra muscle in a diet, right? In a fat loss
right,
phase. I think this is my theory is that because you just started really pushing the weights properly in January and then shortly after when your fat loss phase, you were still in that newbie gains phase
sure,
from a stimulus perspective. And then you were in a fat loss phase. So if we take your percentages and we do the math, you lost 23 pounds of that 20 in fat, meaning you gained 3 pounds of muscle because like it would be negative otherwise, right?
right,
So
that's pretty cool.
it's cool, right? So just again for the listener, she lost 20 pounds on the scale, but she actually gained 3 pounds of muscle and lost 23 pounds of fat. So you got leaner upon leaner
Yeah,
doing
like, I
that.
never thought about it that way until you said that, it's pretty cool.
It's like the holy grail of body composition, right?
Right,
And now, of course, Carol's going to potentially go into a building phase and might gain a tiny bit of fat in the process at some point. if she builds, and then if she cuts again, she might not be able to necessarily gain muscle, but she's already gained all this muscle to keep in the future. So, did you get stronger while losing that fat? Like, it sounds like you gained
I
mass, but did you also
did.
get stronger?
I did get stronger, yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I track all my weights and everything and how much I'm lifting, and I always do progressive overload, and yeah, like, I could still lift heavier almost every week,
Yeah.
with my lifts, so that was pretty cool.
And you know what that tells me? That tells me that besides your individual advantages you may have genetically, it tells me that you had enough recovery, that you were
Mhm.
getting good sleep, that you were probably also moving enough to keep your energy flux high so that you keep the calories high, and thus the calories could fuel what felt to your body like less of a diet, right?
Right, absolutely,
Less of a
yeah.
diet. I think people need to
Mhm.
understand that, because more and more I want to talk about that these days is the idea that even though you're dieting, what's important on the diet is the deficit, but you don't have to be in that deficit at a ridiculously low number of calories.
Right.
You could be on it at a higher number if you do these other things. And sleep's a big one. Like, I think you were pretty good with sleep, right?
It is.
Good.
Sleep is
Yeah.
huge,
Yeah.
yes.
It's big because I've seen people literally jump by 200 calories in their expenditure when they start getting more sleep,
Yep, yep.
And so now if you're
Mhm.
on, that's 1200 versus 1400 calories.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
And I think the other thing that made a difference for me was just my daily walks. Like, I walk every single day after school. I stop by the
Yes.
greenway and I walk for, like, anywhere from 45 minutes, maybe an hour if I have time. And I think that really helped me as well.
You were averaging 10, 12,000, or even a little more.
Probably about 12,000, some
Yeah.
days maybe 15, but, yeah, I mean, walking is so underrated. It's like
Yes.
the best therapy. It's great.
It is. You're right. It has so many benefits besides just the expenditure. Yeah.
Yeah.
And you can
Mhm.
listen to podcasts. You can think. Right? What do you like to do when you walk?
Well, of course, I love listening to podcasts for sure, but I also really just love, finding clarity in my walk. Like, if there's
Mm.
something I'm kind of, like, struggling with emotionally or trying to figure out, that just being in nature really helps bring clarity, and it also just is such a great de-stressor. It helps me feel so much better.
That is good. You're speaking to me, Carol.
Yeah, for
You know
sure.
what? You know what I do sometimes? I will start off listening to a podcast,
Mhm.
and then my brain starts to get distracted with some other thought that's been niggling there and just waiting, right? And I'm
Right.
like, okay, stop the podcast and start to explore this. And I will literally talk out loud. Personally, I do this. I will talk out loud in the middle of nobody can hear me, to kind of process through the thoughts. And you're right, it's kind of your own therapy
It
while you're walking.
is. It's
So
great.
it's great.
Yeah.
What you can't do is,
Mhm.
well, I don't want to claim you can't do that while running. You can to an extent, but there is that
Right.
extra distraction of like focusing on the running too.
Sure,
Yeah.
absolutely.
All right. So then we transitioned to the maintenance phase, right?
Right.
Using a recovery diet, which, just to
Mhm.
clarify for folks, is when you come back up to your current maintenance. And you could do it right away or you can take a few days, but it's not reverse dieting, which is kind of the older idea of like slowly coming up over like weeks and not ever quite getting to your maintenance. So, and you mentioned we use macro factor, which lets you
Mhm.
know what your expenditure is. So when you started your diet, it might have been X and now it's X minus whatever. That's your current maintenance. It brings its own challenges going to maintenance, doesn't it? Right?
It does, yes.
Physiological. So how did you manage it? Like, how did you deal with that? How did you sustain your success coming out of the diet so that you didn't just like binge and go back to your old ways, and then, so that the listener understands how to manage that transition.
Right, sure. Well, something just, like, struck a chord in me. It was just like, "I've worked too hard to get this far. I'm so invested in it. Like, I'm not gonna go and just blow everything, after I've worked so hard." And also, I have to say, this is something that I didn't expect. Like, when I went into maintenance from the fat loss phase, I was just gradually increasing my calories because it was, like, a huge jump for me to go from, like, 1,400 to, like,
Mhm.
I don't know, was it 2,200, I think? It
Yeah.
was such a huge jump, and I could not physically eat that much food. I got so full so fast, I guess because maybe my stomach shrunk. I don't really know, but it just was not possible for me to eat that much food. So,
Hmm.
like, I would get so uncomfortably full, and I just felt awful, and then I'd have a stomach ache, and I'd be like, "Okay, I'm not doing that again."
Hmm.
So I went kinda slow with bumping up my calories, but again, I think it was also it's like, wow, I get to eat more of this and I get to eat more of that, and this is so exciting and so great. Like who gets to do this
Yeah.
really? So, and I just really, like I said, I just didn't want to blow the progress I'd made. And honestly, I knew that if I overate, I would feel awful
Mm.
physically. And I just did not, I didn't want that. So yeah.
Yeah, so the part about upping your calories was for the psychological and the biofeedback aspects, which are exactly the reasons we would do it that way, right? As we talked about on our call. And but just so people know, reverse dieting, it normally is intended to avoid overgaining weight, right?
Hmm.
And in your case, we're simply avoiding you feeling terrible
Right.
by jumping too much, which is the right way, the right reason to come up, not instantly by, like you said, it was something like 800 calories because you were in a fairly aggressive deficit. It was the appropriate deficit for you, but it was fairly aggressive. And then the second part you mentioned was this idea of now all of a sudden it just seems like a buffet of calories available to you, even though this is what's required to maintain your weight. And actually, it's probably going to go up from there as you recover. I mean,
Right.
what were you were you thinking that you would like not be able to eat enough at some point? You would just like
Yeah,
constantly lose weight.
I honestly was. There were some
Yeah.
days I'd be looking at Microfactor being like, "Okay, how many more calories do I need to get to this?" And my husband's like, "What are you doing?" And I'm like, "I'm trying to eat more, but I just don't think I can." But also, I do wanna say there is this piece, of it, but, especially with women and the scale, like, I will readily admit I had this little, fear of, like, seeing the scale weight go up, and I did not wanna see that, It's like, I don't wanna see it go up, and
Mhm.
so, I think also there was just this, like, mental roadblock to get over and be like, "It's okay if it goes up. It's really okay."
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, because we did talk about, and that's being aware, right, and being
Mhm.
understanding of what's going on with the body, right? Because when we look at if you gain 2 pounds overnight, and I say this all the time, like
Yeah,
it doesn't mean you gain 2 pounds of fat because you would have had to overeat by 7,000 calories. Well, you're
exactly.
not even eating to your maintenance yet. So logically, and I know the logical brain, emotional brain, they fight a lot.
Yep.
Logically, that's not possible. So what's left? Well, we know what's left: fluid, glycogen, the carbs, the food in your gut, the food, being digested, maybe inflammation because you're training harder. And that's not even to count, your cycle if you're a woman and other things.
Right.
So we talked about that. And if you're listening and you're coming out of a diet and you go back to maintenance and you're doing it the right way, you're probably going to gain what, 2 to 4 pounds, most people, maybe guys a little bit more than that. Is that about what you saw?
Yeah, it's really funny. I actually sometimes my weight would shoot up by a couple pounds, but then the next day it drop a couple pounds. Like
Yeah.
in fact, that just happened recently. Like my weight shot up by 2 pounds. It was after I had horrible insomnia and I was stressing about going back to work.
Hmm.
And then the next day it was back down 2 pounds. So I'm really like, I guess overall, maybe I've gained a pound. I don't
Yeah,
know.
exactly. And at your weight, that actually does make sense, right? Like being 120 a pound, whereas like a 200-pound guy, it might be two or three. But
Right.
and the point is, it's like it's insignificant, and it also
Yeah.
has nothing to do with fat. It's just you regaining the fluid, and now you're sitting there. You're just sitting there with all this food, and that's your new maintenance, and that's the beautiful thing because you have muscle mass that's giving you this, and muscle mass and movement that are
Yeah.
contributing to that. It's pretty cool.
Exactly, and it's mind-blowing because if you'd have told me, like, that I would be eating this many calories a day and not
Mm.
gaining weight, I'd be like, "You're kidding," like, significant weight.
Mhm.
"You're joking, that's not possible," and it's just
Yep.
crazy to actually be living it out, like, daily.
Yes.
Pretty
Yeah, we
wild.
see it all the time, and everyone's different, again, everyone responds at different levels,
Mhm.
and everyone has a different, like Carol's doing everything right, I would say, for the most part, like doing all the things quote unquote optimally, as best you can. And some people will struggle with some more of these things, but always know that it's in your power. Like the choice is there, that you have
Mhm.
these toggles and that you can make the change. So important message. I mean, super inspiring. You mentioned also that strength training has influenced your mindset and it increased your confidence. Like, I want to touch on the mental resilience part because I think that's really important. And I think you said, quote, gain a mental edge with the hard things in life. Can you elaborate on that?
Yes, that is so true. So it has definitely brought me a lot more confidence. I've never really had a ton of confidence in myself, and just my profession, I think, has made some of those things a little more challenging for me. Um, and so lifting heavy and just like being able to lift heavy things and get strong just really changed my mindset to, I can do this. Like this, I'm not going to limit myself anymore. I think as women, a lot of times we like put self limitations on ourselves. Like we impose these limitations that we cannot do X, Y, Z. Um, why? Like just because we've never done it, that doesn't make any sense. You can do anything you set your mind to. So I think the fact that I could like, say for example, hit a PR on my bench press was like, oh my gosh, if I can do this, I can do anything. Like I am capable. I'm strong, not just physically, but mentally and emotionally, and I can do it.
Yeah, I mean, you never pushed anything like that above you in your life, right?
Right,
And now you did. So you did
right,
something to make that change.
yeah,
Um, I want to sit with that a bit because it's, you know, it's a cliche, right? To say like, well, you can do anything and put your mind to it. I'm not belittling what you said. What I'm saying, people use that as a cliche,
right,
but there's something about when you're effectively by yourself. This is a solo activity. If you think about it, even though we're in a community and you have coaches, at the end of the day, when you press that bar, it's you and your muscle fibers and your mind,
yeah,
right?
right,
And you're like, well, this is pushing stuff around, and now I can change my body by pushing stuff around, right? And how does that translate to other things? Like, is there something else? You mentioned the confidence at work and others.
mhm.
Is there something else you noticed you changing how you approach it?
I think like sharing my opinion and speaking my mind about things in the past, I'd always be a little hesitant.
Okay.
I'm a peacemaker, and I really avoid conflict,
Mm,
just by nature. And so inserting my opinion meant there could be conflict, and I didn't want that. But so I was always so hesitant to do that. But now I'm like, yeah, I'm gonna say what's on my mind.
love it. I
Yeah.
love it. Just from that, that's awesome. That's great. Okay, so I don't know why I have this question in my notes here, but one of the three pillars of self determination theory, which we talked about with Eric Helms a while back.
Mhm.
The others are autonomy and competence, but one of them is relatedness, which is being part of a community. Okay, now I know why I wanted to talk about this. Okay, how has being part of a community, since we just talked about how lifting is a solo activity, but at the same
Right.
time, everything you're doing is a part of a community. How has that influenced your journey, and how could listeners find their community?
Sure, absolutely. Well, being part of the Wits and Weights community has been like, it's been so supportive. It's really helped me grow like with like-minded individuals and feel like I have something in common. There's accountability, like when you did that Shape Up for Spring challenge, that was so much
Mhm.
fun. I loved that. And so it just gives you the impetus to keep going when you're maybe not really feeling motivated. And I mean, there's so many groups out there, and I just, on social media, whatever, on Facebook, there are so many groups out there that are just waiting for you to join and that are there to help you. And so I say just reach out, especially the Wits and Weights community. It's great. It's great. And also, like, you learn so much from other individuals in the group. It's
Yeah.
fabulous. I mean, Alan, for example, who's in our community, he has taught me so much about mindfulness, and I love that, especially as an educator. And so it's just you never know what you're going to end up getting from the group.
Yeah, that's a great point. Just the idea that there's fresh perspectives, knowledge, and there's some characters, there's some fun people, there's some
Yes.
jokesters, there's serious folks. We've got some people that are like really serious lifters, and they'll kind of like in a positive but humorous way, let you
Right.
know what you're doing wrong, which is fine
Yes.
because we're all there in a kind of a safe space to help each other learn. Yeah,
Right.
yeah. So
Yeah.
I'm glad you mentioned that. Yeah.
Yeah. And something else that's really cool is like, form checks. Like if I wanted to video myself and post it, I know that everybody would give me advice about my form on a lift.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then of course, like, the once weekly things, or maybe I don't know if it's once a week, but you always do a live recording weekly, and it's always on a topic that's pretty helpful, like nutrition or fitness or
Yeah,
mindset.
for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. If we were to continue the infomercial here, because I don't want to over promote the stuff, but what Carol's talking about is you could ask a question and I'll answer it live on Friday. And we're talking about not just a generic question that I would answer on a podcast, but actually your situation. Like if Carol came in and said, these are my lifts, these are my macros, this is this, and I'm struggling with this. What should I do? And I'll give you a specific answer. So
Mhm.
definitely, I don't know how many groups do stuff like that, but we are there to help. Okay, so what about you mentioned stress a little bit before and chronic stress, and how this process helps with that. How did that work?
Well, it was a great avenue for some stress relief, like just pushing around a bunch of heavy weight. It's really great.
Hmm.
And I mean, it's very different from like running, but there is an adrenaline rush to it, like it just feels great. And so when I work out stress that way, as opposed to like ruminating on something or worrying about it, or, it solves a lot of problems for me.
Nice, nice. So just
Yeah.
the act alone of the lifting
Yes,
de-stresses you. Cool.
it does.
Yeah,
Yes. Yeah, for
and
sure.
and
And
and yeah,
it takes your mind off whatever you've
yeah,
been stressing about, because you're
yes,
focused on your lift.
yeah. And would you say how does it compare to like a high rep, more endurance style lifting session? Because I think both release endorphins, right? But running and endurance will release more of those in the moment, but they also kind of wipe you out. How do
Right.
they compare? Just so people kind of get the differences.
How do they compare? I think with lifting heavy, it's for me, like I feel more accomplished.
Mm.
Like after a run, I'd be like, "Oh, that was a great run." It was a great run. But after lifting heavy, it's like, "Wow, that felt amazing." Like it's just I don't know, for me it's just a different level of accomplishment.
I'm with you. I'm with you. When you said that, you struck deep in the heart of me because you're right. Like it's not a lot of reps. It's not a lot of volume. You take all these rest periods. If anything, sometimes when you get started, you feel like you're not doing much. But then when you do that one lift that's heavier than you did last time, you do it successfully. You're like, whoa, like I just lifted more than I ever lifted in my life. And then you do it
Right.
again and again and again. You're like, this is something, right?
Yeah,
Versus
exactly.
just okay, I ran again for half an hour. Maybe I ran a little faster. I mean,
Right.
anyway, I could get a little cynical about this stuff sometimes. Um, I think there is a mechanism of chronic stress reduction just from lifting anyway, but from the muscle mass,
Mhm.
like you mentioned, the adrenals and the hormones, there's all of that wonderful stuff. So I'm sure there's that.
Right.
What would you say to all the women over 40 or anyone of any age, but we're sometimes focused on that demographic who are wondering how to get started and get the results that you got or the results that they're looking for?
Sure, absolutely. First of all, keep it simple. You taught me that. Keep it simple. Do what you can with what you have. So, like, if you don't have access to a gym or barbells, for example, start with dumbbells. That's
Hmm.
great. It's a great first step. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that. Just start with something. You can even do your own body weight until you have dumbbells, for example. Start doing something to get you on the path to success. And it can, little things, they add up over time. Like, don't overdo it. Don't, don't set yourself up for failure. Take rest days, recover. Make sure that you know the importance of that. And yeah, just start small, go after it, and you can do it.
Love it. Do something, keep it simple. Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Also, I just wanna say, I know for me, like, it was kind of hard to figure out a structure to my fitness
Mm.
routine. Like, I'm a planner. I plan my training sessions out every single week. Every Sunday afternoon, I plan out what I'm doing for the week. And initially, when I got started with you, I wasn't really sure, like, which program to do, what should I do? And so you gave me some great options. And Thinner, Leaner, Stronger is really awesome. And also right now, I'm currently doing, the program Stronger that was put out by, Katie and Heather off of Stronger Than Your Boyfriend.
Yeah.
And that one's great too. And I mean, like, they're all good and there's so many good ones out there. So find a program that you like and stick with it.
Absolutely. And there's different ones for different people, even though I talk about a few that I think are highly effective. Because for me, look, I'm lazy, like in the sense that I don't want to waste time. I want to get the results as fast as I can,
Mhm.
without burnout, without all the other things. And so that's what I will recommend. But like you said, start with what you have. So I will definitely get people that say, but I just absolutely can't get access to a barbell no matter what. No gyms have it. I can't get it. I can't fit it in my house, this and that. It's okay. It's okay.
Yeah,
Don't stress. Like there'll be
absolutely.
something. And I guarantee that once you get started with something that is way more effective than what you're doing now, even if it is not
Mhm,
optimal,
mhm.
the results, like you mentioned before, Carol, are going to inspire you to get creative and figure out how to keep going.
Right,
Right. Yeah.
exactly. Yeah.
So, what about on the coaching side? So this is where,
Mhm.
again, not everyone can afford a coach, of course. And there are a lot of people who are self starters and who are very self motivated and they can read a book and they can go and just do everything perfectly and have great discipline and willpower. The other 95% of people, like you said, maybe have tried many things over the years. I'm in this camp as well, tried many things over the years. And it wasn't until I started getting help from somebody that I started to make more progress. So if someone's on the fence about strength training in general, but hopefully
Mhm.
they're convinced of the value of that listening to the show. But on working with an online coach, for example, what's your advice for that person who's wondering about that?
Sure, yes, I would say just do it. Just, like, take the plunge and do it, because I wish I had done it a long time ago. It woulda saved me, just some struggles that I had with previous attempts. Just do it because, like, for me, I have a tendency to overanalyze things, and if I'm out here floating on my own little island, I'll overthink everything to death and then, like,
Hmm.
spin my wheels and not get anywhere. But with you, I could just shoot you a message, and you would respond right away, and then I knew exactly what to do. So just do it, and you won't regret it.
And it took you 4 months to get amazing results, right?
Yeah. Yep.
Think of that in the scheme of your life, of
Right.
years and decades of your life. And so anyone listening who's like, once you make the decision to do that, to accelerate the process, working with a coach or getting help or whatever it is, whether it's in a group program, an individual coach, something that your insurance pays for, I don't care. Think the results are going to come pretty quickly in relative terms, right?
Right. Yes.
Um, and
It's
yeah,
definitely an investment worth taking.
yeah, because if I ask you on who's listening 6 months ago, where did you say you'd be today? You probably said the same answer you say today. Not you, Carol, because you've gotten your results, right? But someone, if I
Right.
say where do you want to be in 6 months? Did you ask yourself that question 6 months ago and get the same answer? And 6 months before that, get the same. In which case, there's maybe time for a change.
Mhm. Sure.
That's the way I look at it. My eight
Right.
years spent in CrossFit, not doing anything. That's the way I look at it.
Right.
Um, all right. So, and then as far as working with a coach, how does someone make the most of that process so that they know that, hey, from day one, they're actually getting what they need out of it?
I just to make the most out of it, just, don't hesitate to reach out to your coach
Mhm.
anytime with anything. Coaches, especially they're just a wealth of information. So it's like, take advantage of that.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I have clients who all they use me for is like an encyclopedia. And guess what? That works for them because they couldn't have found that they couldn't have Googled or Chat GPT that information and got exactly what they needed,
Right.
in 2 seconds. And I think that's important because I use all those tools as well. But I know that
Mhm.
if I'm struggling as a business owner or as a husband or whatever, and I just need an answer for me that's gonna work, it's great to have a friend, a coach, a community, even if it's a free community. It doesn't have to be a coach, right? It could be in a community. Go ask, Joe or Susan, right? Like the
Right.
question, and they'll get you that
Right.
answer. Yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
Yeah. So true.
So, what has been the most surprising result of this entire process?
Um, the most surprising result. Um, well, it was really surprising that everything happened so quickly. Like that definitely
Yeah.
surprised me just with the fat loss. But I think just how stronger I've become and how I'm able to lift heavy. And that's really been surprising because ever since that first injury back with CrossFit, I just over and over, I tell myself, I can't lift
Mm,
heavy, I can't lift heavy, I can't lift heavy because XYZ happened, and I mean, my leg still flares up every now and then,
sure.
but I had to jump that hurdle and just say, I can do this. And so, but I think that really has been the most surprising that, yeah, I can and I do and I did it and it's great.
And what do you want to be doing when you're, say, 90 in terms of strength? See, now that you've transformed your identity in a way, think about it. Like to the day you die, what do you want to be doing that for your, that demonstrates your strength?
Yeah, well, I mean, I would still love to be lifting. I've never really thought of myself lifting at 90, but I would really love to be doing that. Just being active,
Yeah,
just
yeah.
staying active.
The wonderful thing is that you can. That's the thing. That's the
Right.
out of this whole process, you can be that person and buck the trend. Buck the trend of the again, 90-95% of people when we see walking around as they get old and, frailness sets in and disease and everything else.
Mhm.
So, in the short term, you've gotten the physique you wanted, but you've also gotten strength and health in the long term all together, which is wonderful.
Definitely.
I'm inspired by you. So I know I'm talking a lot, not asking as many questions, Carol, but it's just wonderful to see this.
Thank you.
So, you know, a question I'm going to ask next. It's the penultimate question of the interview.
Okay.
What question did you wish I had asked, and what is your answer?
All right. So I thought long and hard about this one. And like one of the questions I get a lot from people when I tell them about my routine is, how do you get up so early? I do get up. I get up at 4 a.m. because I have to leave my house at 6:45 to get to work, and so I make my strength training a priority in my day. So I get up really early. But also, one thing that has made a difference for me is I read a book called The Miracle Morning by
Oh yeah.
Hal Elrod. You've
Mm,
probably heard of it.
mm.
He's got a fabulous podcast. If you're not familiar with who he is, you should check him out because he has a really inspirational story. He was in a car accident, nearly died, was in a coma for like 6 days, and made this transformational comeback. So he wrote The Miracle Morning, and he's got this acronym. I think it's SAVERS, and it's like, so each morning the goal is you set yourself up for success by doing each of these little things as part of your daily routine. The S stands for silence. And so this is like meditation. The A is affirmations. So every day I write down a daily affirmation, like I will or I can, or just something that is affirming for me. The V is visualization. This is where you like visualize yourself going throughout your day successfully. This is great when you're
Mm,
lifting heavy to like
mm.
visualize doing that.
Yeah.
The E is for exercise. Yeah, the E is for exercise, and of course I do that in the morning. And then the R is for read. So he's a big, like self-help, read a book about something, to help yourself grow. And then the S stands for scribe, which means write. So then write in a journal. So I read that book a couple years ago and it really just changed my whole morning routine. And also, something else he points out is like the night before, tell yourself that you're going to wake up ready for the day. Like make that
Yes.
mindset change the night before, and, like, even if you know that you're not gonna be getting much sleep because you're going to bed late, tell yourself you're gonna wake up and be ready. And so, it's really cool to, like, be successful with all those things before you even leave the house, and it just sets up your day much differently than it otherwise would, at least for me. And so, that would be my answer if people ask me how I get up at 4 AM.
Yeah, no, love it. There's like morning lifters and afternoon lifters, and I read that book years ago too, and we all take something different from it. But you are right that like starting your day off on a good solid footing, thinking ahead, planning ahead, sounds like you get your day ready ahead of time, and you're in control, right? You're just like in control of
Mhm.
your outcome, and that's what this is all about. So definitely to all the 4 a.m. lifters out there, take Carol's advice and still try to get the sleep, at a decent
Yes.
time the day
Yeah.
before because it will catch up
Yeah.
to you.
I go to bed at, like, 8, so there is that.
Yeah, I don't know if Hal lifts heavy weights, so we got to get him, trained, but all the other stuff. Um, so, okay, where do you want listeners to learn about you and reach out to you?
Sure. Well, I am in the Wits and Weights community, so folks are able to reach out to me through there, and I'll be happy to help you respond to any questions, just support you, cheer you on in your journey.
Yeah, so I'll include the link to that, and then so folks can join and find Carol. And if you can't find her, just post or reach out to me and say, "Where's Carol?" So we can reach out to her. But it should be pretty obvious. Carol, this is fun. The time just flew by. I love everything about your story. It's just teaches us how resilient our minds are and our spirits, and how we can change at any age, no matter who we are, no matter where we're studying, no matter what we've done in the past. And just thank you so much for sharing your experience.
Oh, thank you. This was so much fun. It was an honor to be on your show.
So much fun. Thanks, Carol.
Thank you.